Okay, Mom, why don't you introduce where we are and what we're doing?
What year it is?
It's July 2019, and we are at Lake Ponderay for our family reunion.
And what are we doing right now?
We're interviewing Dad and me about our 50 years together, but it's really only 49.
8.5.
Actually,
48 and a half. Why are we doing this?
Dad wanted to.
Might not make it.
Yeah, you might not make it to 50, so we're celebrating.
Not if I paddleboard with you.
Okay, why don't you guys start the story by telling us how you met, when you met, where, and no lies.
Dad. Maybe tell us a detail we don't know already.
Well, this video is something that's very common in the church, and in the church archives, they're full of these kinds of interviews of people. And I thought, well, okay, we'll get our interview and we'll put it in the archive of, if nothing else, our family, so that 100 years from now, I would like to have a video of Grandpa and Grandma Anderson 100 years ago. Or my grandpa and grandma Wright, you know, who came across the plains. And so this will be the opportunity for Eliza's grandchildren to be able to meet her grandpa. And that's,
and grandmother.
And grandmother. Now, are you hearing us okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just didn't know how good your mic was.
It's good.
Okay, I think the story begins, I don't know, Mom might have a different idea, but the story begins when I was, is it?
Just take them off.
Okay. The story begins when I was a student at the University of Idaho. I was in my sophomore year, and we would go over to the Institute for Church, because they only had one church meeting, and the town ward met in the church. And so, in the Institute building. So I was over there and I was walking down the hall, and I saw a girl. I remember a blue dress, but I don't know if it was a blue dress or not for sure. Okay, I remember a girl in a blue dress sitting on a table talking to some kids. And I walked by and I noticed her and I thought, oh. And so I turned around and I walked back again, and I noticed her again. And so then I turned around and walked back again and noticed her again, and then went about my business. Didn't really think much more about it.
Why? What caused you to notice her?
Well, I don't know. It was a funny thing because. I mean, she was obviously a cute person, you know, and a cute girl, but I mean, it wasn't like, you know, knock you dead, gorgeous kind of thing. And you know, I mean, she was dressed modestly, and she was, you know, just, yeah, and so I don't know. I think there was something there that just. I don't know.
A spark.
Yeah, just something went ding inside, and I really didn't understand what it was. That's my side.
Whoa.
That was intense.
That was exciting.
This,
You can do better.
this could be
I'd like to.
way too long if we do all this.
I could
Well,
take two
okay, we
notes.
can just cut it short then.
No.
I'm just saying.
Just keep it going.
Okay, so because our ward met in the Institute building on campus, I had seminary, early morning seminary at that building, and they had a bulletin board up with all the LDSSA student officers, and they had their picture and their name.
So back it up. You were in seminary at the time, meaning you were in high school.
Yes,
Okay, and Dad saw you as a high school girl.
yes.
Okay.
But now I'm telling about like when I met So you girls cover your ears. So I was walking along, I saw this bulletin board, and I stopped just to look at who was on it, you know, and I saw this boy, and I was like, he is so cute. I'm gonna date him next year when I'm in college. So I already had picked him out before I got to college.
So you were hanging out in a blue dress as a high school girl in the college hangout area?
Well, the Institute building,
That's where they had seminary.
that's where they had seminary, that's where we had church.
Wait, did Dad see you when you were in college? Or did he see you when you were in high school?
Well,
High
I was a sophomore in college, and she was a senior in high school.
Okay.
I guess you didn't know that fact before.
No.
Shocking.
Haley, you could.
But then when she came to college, we had an institute opening social. And Grandma came in her high school blazer,
Red,
Bermuda shorts,
red,
and knee socks.
white.
No, they were dark knee socks. White knee socks, I would have run the other way. And so she was sitting there, and you know, and I said to my friend, I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "It must be one of the new freshmen." And so I thought, oh, but I never related the girl that I had seen in the blue dress with the girl that was at the Institute social. I did not connect them together. And so I said, well, I will visit with her and get to know her, because she looks like a nice person to know. Well, she left early and went home, and because she had a Gentile date and didn't want to stay to the Institute social. So I never did get to meet her that night.
Well, I left to go to a high school football game, which is kind of embarrassing, but that's the way it went.
Were you living at home at the time?
No, I was living on campus in the Delta Gamma sorority,
Oh.
And Dad was in a fraternity at the time?
SAE, Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. Frat rat.
And then the next time is the famous story that I've told before that I'll just tell in Reader's Digest. Then the next thing, I'm called into the bishop's office, and the bishop says, "Do you remember the girl that was at the Institute social that left early?" Well, I did. And he said, well, you know, she's in the sorority, and you know, sometimes that's not a good influence, and she's a very nice girl. Why don't you ask her out and see if you can get her involved in institute activities? So I called her up, and she was too busy, and so I said, okay, thank you, and I went back to the bishop, and the bishop says, no, you have to keep trying. And so I went and I called her again, and she was too busy. I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Thank you very much for calling. Take a number. And so anyway, I went back to the bishop, and he said, all right, one more time, and then you can walk away. And so I called her up the third time, and I said, ta-da-da-da, you know, would you like to go out? And I don't remember exactly how it unfolded, but I think then she said no again, take a number, and I said, well, how about just going down to the student union and, you know, and hanging out and not like a big date. And I think, I don't know, it's getting fuzzy, but anyway, she said yes to whatever, and so we did something. And I don't think it was a real date. But then I think then Mom said, oh, okay. And then everything started working.
I already told you I knew I was going to date him when I was in high school, but every time he asked, I still had my high school boyfriend. I had to get rid of him before I could move on. And so I had a date with my high school boyfriend, and then finally the third time I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna tell my high school boyfriend, I can't go out with you because I have to stay home on Friday night and study. So I did. That's what I told him. And then we went to the student union, and when we were walking back, ran into him. I was like, sorry, so bad. So then that was the end of him, and so then we moved on. So,
Was he a student at Moscow?
yeah,
He's awesome.
Yeah.
And Dad saw him?
yeah,
Could Dad have taken him?
yeah. Definitely. So that's how we met. That's how our first date.
But you didn't get serious at that point because then there were other people involved, like Leopard Pant Girl. Maybe tell that story.
No,
I love
let's
I love
not
that
go.
story.
No, we don't want to go with that story.
Man, I
Okay,
love
moving along.
Okay.
Your first date was Dr. Zhivago.
That was.
Well, we went. I think our first official date we went to a movie, but I don't know if it was Dr. Zhivago.
I don't know, it wasn't.
It was
Dr.
probably
Zhivago.
a Western.
Dr. Zhivago we saw in Idaho Falls.
What were some common date things that you guys did as you got to know each other?
What was the question?
What were some common things you did on dates as you got to know each other, or to get to know each other?
Well, there were fraternity and sorority activities. There were dances, and there were institute activities, and they were different things. And then there was just hanging out, going to a movie.
We did study dates.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Dad
Nothing-
always calendared me in.
So he was always a
They didn't
planner.
have fluorescent paper back then. How they tricky.
I know, but yeah, he was a planner. It was like, okay, Friday night I'll pick you up at 7 and we can go study until 9.
And this is all happening your freshman year.
Yeah.
When did Dad first hold your hand? Did he have courage or did you have to do it?
I can't remember.
Can't remember
He didn't
that.
kiss me for months though.
Let's hear that story. When was your first kiss?
Months. Like I was starting to think there was something wrong with me. Because I was like, or him. Why is he not kissing me?
Let's hear. Like, how did that happen? Like, was it on the doorstep?
No, it was at his apartment because by then he'd moved out of his fraternity. And so we were over at his house. Was it around New Year's maybe?
I don't remember.
Try harder.
Remember her knee socks.
I don't
Yeah, how
remember.
do we remember the knee
Socks.
socks and her dress, but we don't remember the important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Moving on.
yeah.
Hmm.
But I will say one summer he was coming back to Moscow to go to summer school. And he bought a new little Volkswagen with a sunroof. And he was driving it and he got about to McCall, New Meadows in that area. You might not know where that is. But anyway, he fell asleep while he was driving. And he rolled his car and totaled it. And when he came to Moscow, he came over and he had, the top of his head was all scratched up and he had gravel in it from the rollover. And so that was all his money to buy a car, so he bought a bicycle. And so that summer, every place we went, I rode on the handlebars of that bicycle. Because he had no car. That's why I'm paranoid about people falling asleep.
When was the first time that you took him to Grandma and Grandpa?
First time he met my parents?
Yeah, and what was that like?
Well, I remember that. I had gone over to the sorority house to pick Mom up for something. And she was always late. Always. In fact, I used to call her the turtle because she would make me wait downstairs for sometimes up to a half an hour.
Oh, my.
So I was waiting downstairs, and this lady comes in a little grandma's famous ski jacket. You probably never saw it, but she wore her ski jacket for like 42 years. And it was a blue ski jacket.
And it
She
was-
had it on.
It's puffy.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
her puffy ski jacket. And so she comes in and she asks for Kaye. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Could this be her mother? But I didn't say anything. I just sat there patiently. I used to count the flowers on the wallpaper to see how many flowers there were on one wall. And then I was trying to figure out how many flowers there would be in the entire house. And I almost got it all figured out. But anyway, that's when I first met Grandma. And I didn't introduce myself, so I didn't really meet her, but I kind of met her.
Well, I probably came down and said, "Hey, Mom,
Well,
this is Dennis."
she left something for you, and then she left. So
I didn't see her.
no, I don't think you did, because she just handed something to one of the girls and left, and so she wasn't there very long.
Because it was so close to Grandma and Grandpa's, Mom never invited you over for dinner to meet her parents?
Well, that's serious stuff, Jeffrey. You don't bring a girl to dinner at anybody's house
boy.
until it's more than just casual dating. And we were casual dating for probably at least a semester and a half.
Yeah, I'm not asking about the timeline. I'm just asking about the moment you met Grandpa
And
Morgan.
I do not remember going over to their house for the very first time. I don't remember that.
They weren't rough or they weren't welcoming. You don't remember that kind of.
Oh yeah, they were always very nice. That wasn't the problem. I mean, Grandpa Morgan was Grandpa Morgan. You know what he was. He was kind of gruff, but Grandma Morgan was always just really friendly and nice, and so.
Okay, I'll just remember. The first time, I think, was in the spring, maybe. Your parents came up. They came up for some reason. Anyway, and so we invited them over to my house with my parents, and my mom made cake and ice cream, and that's the first time the four of them met, was in the spring.
So not even 1 year.
We had been dating since September, so that was a long time.
So did you meet Grandpa and Grandpa Wright first, or did Dad meet your parents first?
I would say you probably met my parents before I met your parents.
Yes.
And the thing Dad used to do is Star Trek had just started, and he would come over and he would lay on the floor in the family room, or in the living room. We only had a living room. And he would watch Star Trek with my little brother John, Eddie. And the two of them would just be all into Star Trek.
Oh, really?
We were actually pretty close when he was young and I was older, and then he grew up and went to high school, and
They bonded
that
over
was the
Star
end of
Trek.
that.
He bonded over Star Trek.
Yep.
Okay, so after the first year, then what happens?
Well, the second year is, I suppose we get more serious, and I'm not dating anyone else. Your mother still has, dates every once in a while. She runs for the Sweetheart of Sigma Chi and has a bunch of dates with the boys from that fraternity and other things. But and then I go student teaching, so I'm up in Coeur d'Alene student teaching, and I remember one time I thought, I'd like to go see Kaye. I'm lonely. And so I drove all the way down to Coeur d'Alene, and she had a date with somebody else. And so, anyway, that was a kind of a frustrating weekend, and I drove all the way back and thought, what's going on?
So that was your senior year,
Yeah, that was our senior year.
and you were getting
Your mission
worried that you weren't going to find a woman to marry, or
No, he never thought about that.
What
No,
about your mission call?
I still had not figured out the feeling that I had when I saw the girl in the blue dress. By this time, I knew it was the same person, but I just couldn't figure it out. I mean, she was fun to be with, and I really liked her, but I just couldn't figure it out. I think it was, in some ways, it was a lack of maturity on my part. I think I just really wasn't mature enough to think the bigger picture. It was pretty much, I was still pretty much a teenager and just kind of thinking about myself and not really figuring out that there's a bigger picture.
I think Dad should tell about getting his mission call because he was older.
That's what I just said.
So why don't you tell about graduating first? Explain why that all happened.
What my friends that I grew up with,
Story of my life.
they went on missions when they were 19. They went to Rick's College, and Rick's College at that time, as Reed would understand, was just kind of a playboy school. And, kids just kind of went there and flunked out. And my friends all did. And they just went there and flunked out. And Vietnam was raging. And they were drafting people right and left. And they had put a quota on the wards and stakes. They could only send so many boys on missions. The rest of them had to be drafted. Well, the quota was 2 boys per year. And so when I was 19, they didn't even ask me if I wanted to go on a mission because I was getting good grades and doing great in school, and these other guys were flunking out. And so the bishop was doing everything he could to keep these kids out of war. And so then I became 20. And it's pretty much the same story. And so then my senior year, I came home for Christmas, and I said to my bishop, well, can I go on a mission? And he said, no, you're too old now. And so he said, why don't you just get on with your life, and it's fine. You don't have to serve a mission. I said, but that's something I want to do. And he said, well, we don't always get to do the things we want to do. So I went back and I told my student bishop and he said, that's not right. He said, there's got to be a way. And so he called around to the little wards in Washington that were in, that farm area. And he found one that didn't use their quota. And so he said, I found one. And so I went into the mission field from, I don't know, he never did tell me what the name of the ward was. Just some ward in Othello or somewhere, I don't know where it was. And that's where I went on my mission. And so then I did the paperwork and got the call, and Mom and I spent the summer together as I worked on my master's degree. And then in September I went on a mission. But that was a really difficult, not difficult, it was just kind of an odd summer. I was driven to go on a mission. I knew that I had to do that. But I could not figure out in my mind how Mom fit into that picture. And looking back on it, I say, it was really an immature thing.
Okay, so I'll just take
didn't
over
get it.
right now. So we spent the summer, he was in Moscow going to summer school, and I was working at the swimming pool. And then when I'd get off work, we were together all the time. And we didn't date anyone else. It was just, and so he said, why don't you come down to Gooding for my mission farewell? And I was like, yeah, okay, that'd be great. And so I flew down.
Weren't you really sad he's leaving on a mission for 2 years? You finally found, like,
I know, he
The guy?
finally kissed me.
that's 2 years.
No, but I expected him to do,
Okay.
like, he had to be a missionary, of course. So I get to Gooding, I'm staying at his house. Grandma Lola is quizzing me night and day, like nonstop, about my whole entire life.
Maybe it wasn't quizzing, maybe she was just
Getting to know you.
interested in getting to know you.
Oh, I've been there several times, so anyway. So the night before we're driving him to Salt Lake to take him to the mission home, we're outside by the cows, by the dairy cows, or by the fence.
By the haystack.
And I'm feeling sad. So I'm probably crying, I don't know.
Yes, you were crying.
Well, I was crying after you said this. So happy we don't have anything we have to discuss. I'll just see you in 2 years. I was like, I just invested 2 years of my life in this. And so I started crying, and then we were out there till about 2 in the morning so that he could apologize. And then we had to get up like at 6 and drive to Salt Lake, take him to the to the
Mission home.
mission
So you
home.
weren't set apart the night before.
No, you're set apart in the MTC. But I, looking back on it, I mean, mom has, she remembers it just how it was. But honestly, I was absolutely clueless. Just clueless. I just had no idea of a big picture. I couldn't see it. I just really couldn't see it. I didn't really see the big picture until I got home.
So
When I
we
got
had-
home off my mission, then it was like suddenly the window opened, the light came pouring through, and I said, I got it.
And that's why he got home in September, we got engaged in October, planned the wedding in November, married in December, and pregnant in January.
Making up for lost.
Huh?
Yeah, it was, I remember the day.
So why did you wait 2 years for him then? So something at the haystack, he said, wait for me?
I always knew it was him. I always knew it was gonna be him.
So,
I told my dad that. I even told my dad
so
that.
did you date while he was gone?
I did.
It was just for free
After he
meals?
said, we have nothing to discuss, I was like, okay.
Well, when I asked Kay's dad for permission to marry her, he said, what took you so long? That's what he said. And that's all he said. Not like, oh, that's so wonderful, so glad to have you the family. No, what took you so long? Oh, well, you know,
I think he said thank you too.
yeah, and he was reading the paper, and he put it down, and then once I answered, he put the paper back up again, and that was the end of that. But I went to the temple because I was having all these feelings, and I mean, it was just overcoming me. I just thought, I just don't know what all this is about. And so then, well, I got off the airplane. I have to tell you this. I got off the airplane in Salt Lake City because there was a layover, and Mom came to the airport because we had not really written that much the last little while, my mission. And so anyway, I wrote her and I said, this is my flight plan. And if you're, you know, and she had told me she was teaching in Salt Lake. So anyway, she came to the airport in a sundress. Well, a missionary, you know, is, I don't know, I was used to a lot of things in London because it was a kind of a interesting time. But Grandma looked really good in her sundress. And I was sitting there. I remember, yeah.
That was an intense moment.
It was a good moment.
Yeah, that was.
You got to back up because it only records for so long. Okay, now you can go.
Okay, I got off the airplane and I was sitting on the airplane and you know, and I got off the airplane and went down, and in those days there was no TSA or anything. You just got off the airplane and the people were there. And so she was there, and I thought, this is the most beautiful girl I have seen in my whole life. And you know, and it's like she had grown up. And of course she had on a dress, and she was all tan and everything, like out of a movie magazine. So anyway, so then, you know, then things started clicking inside of me. So finally I went to the temple.
It took the sundress.
And no, yeah, it was a sundress.
It was a little short. It was the 60s. So,
And so I went to the temple, and I was sitting in the celestial room. I was just sitting there saying, should I marry Kaye? Should I marry Kaye? Should I marry Kaye? Should I marry Kaye? I don't know really what I was expecting. I suppose I was expecting a temple worker to come up to me and say, you should marry that girl you're thinking about. But no. And so finally I had fasted for 3 days. And they told us in the mission field, never do that, but I did it. And so I was sitting there, and finally I closed my eyes and I said, Heavenly Father, what should I do? And I received a revelation. And you might be surprised, because the revelation was not what you might expect. The revelation was, what do you want to do? And instantly I knew how to answer that question. I said, I want to marry Kaye. And then the revelation continued. Well then, go ahead, if that's what you want to do. And I thought, okay. So I jumped up and I ran out of the temple and went and ate 3 hamburgers and D's, and I threw up in the parking lot.
Oh.
And then I came over to see Mom.
Brush your teeth.
You didn't know I threw up in the parking lot?
No.
Yeah. I threw up in the parking lot.
Well, so.
So that's when you proposed? You just got down your knee right then? And
I proposed to Mom, kind of. You know, at the BYU, at that time, they were putting rings in cereal boxes and, you know, doing the most stupid things you can imagine. It was like, remember when you went to a high school dance and people would put a bale of hay in front of your house or something? I mean, that's what it was like at BYU. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought all of that was so stupid. And so, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I didn't put anything in a cereal box. We didn't have a ring. We didn't have anything. And we were just sitting in front of the special ed building, which is now the library in Provo. And I think we agreed to get married.
Well, you did ask me.
You
Well,
did that
yes,
on me?
Did you
but
not
it
meet?
wasn't.
No,
it-
we're in the car.
Yeah, in the Pinto.
I know.
You
I
should have
needed
made him
to-
get on the knee.
I needed to set my
do-over.
yeah, do-over.
maybe right now on camera. Maybe in
Yeah. Actually, he has since.
Okay.
Oh,
What?
let's hear those.
You proposed a second time.
I proposed a second time?
Yes.
I don't. Tell me about it.
When you redid my ring,
Oh,
you were being kind of silly, but I counted it. Because it's
you
the only
counted
time you
it,
ever got
okay.
on your knee.
Well, we went together to buy the ring. And Uncle Bob, have I told you the story? Uncle Bob told us about a place where we get a wholesale diamond. Well, I didn't have
In
a lot of
Salt Lake.
money in Salt Lake. I had a full ride, and I was teaching seminary, but I was also making car payments, and so we weren't rich. We probably had more money than most students. But anyway, so Uncle Bob said, you go to this place, you knock on the door, the guy will come to the door, and you just say, Bob sent me, and you sell wholesale diamonds. So we go down by the Capitol Theater, we climb these iron steps up to the top of this old brick building, and there's this big wooden door. No sign, no numbers, no nothing. So we knock on the door, and the guy slides it open.
A little window like that.
And I said, my brother-in-law Bob sent me here, told me that you could sell me a wholesale diamond. The guy looked at me and he says, I don't know who Bob is, and we don't sell wholesale, we don't sell retail diamonds. We sell diamonds to diamond stores. We don't sell them to the public.
Stores.
Jewelry stores.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, you know, we're getting married, we don't have a lot of money, ta-da, ta-da. And he said, okay. So he opens the door and we go in, and it's this huge room full of all these guys with these little things in their eyes sorting diamonds. He said, you know, and he said, what kind of diamond do you want? And Kay said, I want a marquise, because the marquises were hot then. And so he pulls this tray open, and a purple cloth. I mean, the thing is just full of marquise diamonds. And he says, well, pick one. Well, of course, your mom goes for the biggest one in the whole tray.
Let's see here.
I mean, oh, that one's about $50,000, you know, I mean, you know, and he said, how much do you have to spend? I said, well, I have $1,500. And so he,
I don't think you had that much.
and so he, and you know, $1,500 in 1970,
That much.
that's not bad.
You didn't have that
I
much.
think it's more than.
Well, that's how much we spent.
I don't think so.
How much did we spend?
About 500.
500, okay, well, it was 1,500 in Dave's money. Okay, so we sort through it, and he finds her a nice little diamond. And he says, okay, here it is. Puts it in a little brown envelope, and we're going to do business. I said, well, we want it in a ring. He said, you want it in a ring? He says, I told you, I'm not a jewelry store. We sell wholesale diamonds. And I said, well, you can put it in a ring for us. Just, you know, a nice... And he shook his head, and he said, okay. And sure enough, he puts it in the setting and the whole thing. And
Yes, it is the same
and
diamond.
you know, and he did it all for us, and we paid, I guess, 500. I thought it was 15.
No.
But and then of course then it was all official, and now
No, let me just
I could go to her ward in peace.
Just let me say. So he had to wait about 2 weeks for them to do the ring. So in the meantime, we're engaged, but we don't have a ring. So he picks it up and he says, I'm going to take you out to dinner in Salt Lake. This really nice restaurant. I'm like, well, all right, that sounds great. I'm living in Salt Lake.
Oh, I know.
So he picks
I'd
me
forgotten
up
about that.
and we go to this restaurant. And I should have thought about it when we pulled into this gravel parking lot with all of these big buses full of retired people. We get out and we go into this restaurant that is, it's like a Hawaiian village. And it has a volcano that erupts. It has a rainstorm, a thunderstorm that happens. The lights flash on and off. It was a crazy, crazy place.
And drinks and pineapples.
We had a drink in a pineapple
That's cool.
with two
Cool.
straws. And then when we're having our drink in the pineapple, he gives me my ring.
That's cool.
No wonder you love Hawaii. It reminds you of that.
Maybe, yeah. Remember? I can't remember the name of the place.
I think it was called the Hawaiian Village. It was there when Reed was a little boy, I'm sure. I think it was there until, you know, until the 80s.
It had Christmas lights hanging. It was something.
It was the tackiest thing you could ever imagine.
I loved it. I thought it was great. So that's it. Then I got my ring, and look, we've already gone like an hour. Let's not.
No, you've only
Yeah.
gone for 40 minutes.
And then we were married in December in the middle of a snowstorm
In Logan.
in Logan. And it was, I can't imagine the burden we put on our family. My sister didn't even come. And I mean, it was just awful. And the roads were ice. solid ice.
Well, it wasn't really awful.
Well, the day we got married was quite nice. But boy, there was a lot of snow, and remember the roads were iced over, and
We had planned on getting married December 31st in the Salt Lake Temple. And that's kind of what I wanted. And then Dad said, well, I think we should get married December 28th, and that temple's close, so let's get married in Logan. And I said, well, okay, that sounds great. So we sprung it on our parents. Yep, 3 days after Christmas. So don't do that.
You guys are very thoughtful.
No, we
so
weren't.
our honeymoon was driving to Gooding for an open house, driving to Moscow for a reception, and then driving back down
school.
so she could be at school and I could be in classes.
So it was
Great honeymoon.
kind of poor planning. Just gonna say.
Did you postpone a honeymoon and go later, or are you still planning that?
Many years,
They've had many honeymoons.
many trips. But what was hilarious is we moved to Arizona, and when we moved to Arizona in August, I was 8 months pregnant. So we stopped at the Grand Canyon. We didn't have a reservation. They happened to have a little cabin on the North Rim. We stayed one night in that little cabin. Dad takes my picture. I'm like, and he said, this is your honeymoon. And I was like, well, this is a weird honeymoon.
Baby.
Yeah.
Honeymoon baby.
Well, it's really not our fault because we just had this precocious child that could not wait to come to her for her turn on Earth. It's like, I gotta get there. I don't care what inconvenience it is to my parents. And so here she comes.
This is the parents who got married. No, it's
So you got
Yeah.
so you got married in late December, and then you moved in August. So you had
We moved
finished.
to August to Mesa, Arizona.
So mom finished teaching wherever she was teaching. You finished your master's, and then you moved.
Well, I did all the coursework for my master's before we left. And I had to finish my master's thesis, which I did in Arizona. Then I had to come back up and defend my thesis. And that took a couple of years because of all the things that were going on, because I was a brand new seminary teacher.
I want to know when did you, in your courtship or engagement, did you talk about what kind of family you wanted to have? And did you ever have that kind of conversation? Because both of you came from very different families and the kind you raised in a lot of ways. So did you ever kind of have that conversation? Did you have that mentored to you somehow? Or just curious.
I think we both, because we had been raised in inactive homes, we both knew instinctively that the church would always play a huge part in raising our family. I don't think we ever sat down and discussed it. It was just like, we're all in.
I mean, I know people that have family mission goals, and and they have 10 things and all this. We never did any of that. Quite honestly, everything that happened just came naturally. I mean, Mom was the most natural mother that I can imagine. She just knew what to do. And there wasn't a lot of times that she was doubting or confused or anything. She just knew what to do. And the kids just, it was like, okay, she's the boss. And there was, it was interesting to watch her operate.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Controlled everybody but
But
you.
but it was more of a natural thing. And at least I think it was a single thing where we knew that we were going to break the cycle.
But you never had that conversation.
Well,
That's
not like putting it down on paper and making a chart and
No.
hanging it on the wall and creating a family crest. I mean,
No.
none of that kind of stuff. People didn't do that in those days. It was just a matter of whenever there was a fork in the road, Mom and I just knew which way to go. And we didn't have to spend a lot of time talking about it because we just knew which way to go.
They weren't
Yeah.
hard decisions at
Yeah.
all. We even, when we moved to the North Shore, we even looked for a home that was within a certain radius of the church because we knew we'd be driving there a lot. And so we would buy homes that were close to where we were going to be going to church.
I mean, unlike today, in those days, the church was the center of your life. And your whole life was evolved in the church and the programs and the activities and all of those things. And we didn't have family around us. And so the church became our family, and the church came first. We never talked about whether or not you could continue your swimming lessons.
No, swim team.
Swim team. I mean, the swim team, it didn't matter because it was a Sunday activity, and we did not go swimming on Sunday. We knew it, you knew it, and there wasn't a big thing. And when Jeffrey had the big thing about seminary and basketball, there wasn't a big family meeting and family discussion. Jeffrey knew what to do, he did it, and that was all there was to it. It wasn't like a big kind of decision, and missions and everything just, everything just, it was like we were on a track. And we knew where we were going, and everybody seemed comfortable with that. And until Stephen came along and met the Utah crowd.
No, but the best thing Stephen said was, how do you tell the good guys from the bad guys?
Yeah.
Stephen knew right then. So. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
that's good, I think.
Should we pause it?
Yeah.
Think of some other questions or anything?
I think that's